We're on.
Good evening, everyone. It's Thursday night. You know what that means. It's Words of Wisdom. We're coming at you live. We started this at the beginning of the quarantine and pandemic, and now we just decided that we've got to keep going because there's really no telling when this is going to end, and we're going to all have to adjust to the new normal. And as we do that, we've brought together the six panelists here tonight to give you words of wisdom, where we infuse what's going on in the world with real clinical advice from experts and everything you need to know to make your life a little brighter and have a few words of wisdom. Tonight, we are joined by Tamra Simmons, who is the CEO of the TSB agency and also the executive producer of Surviving R. Kelly. Hello, Tamra. We also have Shatana Nelson, celebrity publicist, certified transformative mediator, and award recipient of the Yellow Rose of Texas. Tonight, we're also joined by Stacy Kaiser, and Stacy is a psychotherapist, a trauma specialist, a media personality, and also you might have seen her on Fatal Vow. We also have Alyssa Gruber, who is a psychologist, therapist, trauma and addiction specialist, meditation instructor, wellness expert, change maker, advocate, and writer. And week after week, we've been lucky enough to be blessed with Dr. Ish Major. And you know, Dr. Major, he can just do it all. He can fix our broken hearts. He can keep our marriage on track. And maybe you've seen him on Marriage Boot Camp. And we are honored to have Dr. Ish with us tonight, who's actually going to be taking on more of a role to keep us in check as a co-host and leader of this Thursday night Words of Wisdom call. And before I turn it over to Dr. Ish, I just wanted to kind of address everyone here on the call because, you know, the feelings you get when you start falling for someone, the butterflies, the restlessness, when you try to get some sleep and you just stare at your phone, waiting for him or her to text you. It's a lot of fun in the beginning, having all the fireworks, the sparks around you when you spend time with each other virtually or after the pandemic ends when you might actually get to meet face to face. But sometimes you get so wrapped up in all the attention that you get from this new person that it's hard to know if it's actually love or if you're just lonely and you like the companionship. So when you find yourself in that situation, tonight, we hope that we're gonna bring you tips on love and loneliness to ease your heartache and move you along in this process. And at the end of it all, just might keep you from feeling so lonely after all. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Ish and we'll just jump right into it.
Yeah, okay, so let's love and loneliness, right? It's a huge thing. And it's one of those things that gets bandied about and tossed about so often. I think it loses its meaning for us because we say it so often, right? Oh my God, I love my car. Oh my God, I love these shoes. Oh my God, I love this TV show. Oh my God, I love this ice cream. It's delicious. And we toss it around so much that it loses its meaning because when it's really time to mean it, what does it mean? And so I always like to start with the definition of a thing, right? What does love mean? How do you define it? And understanding it means something different to everybody, but some of those accepted definitions are an intense feeling of deep affection. All right, so that's good. Strong affection for another, rising out of a kinship or personal ties. Sure, right? Getting closer. Attraction based on sexual desire. Affection and tenderness that lovers feel for each other. Great, fantastic. Affection based on admiration, some sense of benevolence. And so, to me, all those definitions that you can look up miss the mark. Because as great as everybody is on this call and as kind as we are and as loving as we are, one of the coolest things about being in love isn't the love that we give, which is what every definition tells. It's about the love we give back, right? And that's what we're all in the game for. That's where we get the skin in the game. It's that love or connection. It's one of the biggest human needs. It's one of the most basic human needs we have, but the tricky part is it's also the one we have the least amount of control over, right? Because to love somebody, to me, the essence of being in love means that I picked you and you picked me back. And when you don't pick me back, that's the whole thing, right? We feel this thing that we call hurt. We feel this pain. We feel this sadness. We're rejected. Right? Somebody I wanted didn't want me back, and it makes me question, even if it's for a split second, and I do go through my whole thing that every therapist has taught me how to do, even for a quick split second, it makes me think, am I really lovable? And if it means that we're not lovable, that's the exact moment that the anxiety sets in and the panic sets in. And it's because we wonder if we're ever going to get the love we need to get through this world. And once that train leaves the station, all bets are off, because now we're going to do all kinds of things to make sure we get it back, right? And so when I think about love and when I think about that rejection, how does that manifest in our lives? Well, it manifests as loneliness. And immediately for me, you know, every subject is two subjects. It's the thing that we have, it's the thing that we don't have. So immediately when I think about being alone, I always jump to the difference between being alone and being lonely, right? Because they're two hugely different things. Being alone does not mean that you have to be lonely. They're two totally different things. Alone is simply the absence of company. Loneliness feels like the absence of love. And that's what gets us into trouble. And so half of us will go from relationship to relationship and we're looking for it. And the other half of us show up every day in the same relationship and we're looking for it and we're not getting it, repeating these same patterns, never quite getting to the thing we want, which is the love that we're supposed to get back. So Stacy, let me ask you, what is it about those patterns that we keep doing? Why do we keep showing up, different relationships or the same relationship, but never getting the thing we want?
Good question. I think that there are a combination of answers. The first answer is that a lot of us carry baggage with us from our past, from our childhood, from relationships we've had along the way. And if we have not healed that baggage, what ends up happening is we bring it right into the next relationship and we make the same mistakes. And it isn't really just about who we're picking. The baggage also relates to our view of ourselves. Because the reality is, if you don't feel good enough about you, you are going to be choosing people who don't treat you in a way that you deserve to be treated. And so one of the things we need to work on is our baggage and how we feel about ourselves. The second component, I think, is that all of us seek a state of normalcy. We actually like comfort and sameness. And oftentimes what is comfortable is actually unhealthy. And it doesn't always feel comfortable, but it becomes easier to do the same thing over and over again than it is to stretch and change and make a difference. The big parallel I always think of is the whole concept of working out. People will say, oh, it's so hard to work out. I don't feel like exercising. It's hurting my muscles. But all of that work is actually helping your well-being. And the same thing goes for relationships. And then I would say that the last thing that keeps us in these same patterns is so many of us, and this is typically a female thing, we end up being victims of our own compassion. We see the diamond in the rough. We think to ourselves, wow, this is really a good person somewhere inside of there. And I'm going to hang in and I'm going to try and wait until they develop into the kind of person I'm hoping that they will become. And that compassion ultimately leaves us wanting more. And in that kind of a situation where you actually are in a relationship or you're in some kind of a relationship, but you're feeling lonely and you're with a person, and that's something that none of us wants to be feeling.
Yeah, that's terrible. I love that you touched right on that whole broken wing syndrome, because half of the folks I've got in therapy are there because they found this bird with the broken wing and they tried to pick it up and patch it up and hopefully it was going to love them back, and it didn't. So that's that's fact for sure. Louisa, anything to talk about when it comes to the facts of what Stacy said? You know, one of the facts of our relationships is that we pick the love that we feel like we think we deserve, right? And so it's really all about how you feel about yourself. And I think, Louisa, you had something you want to say about that?
Well, yeah. I'd like to start out by saying, scientifically, loneliness is defined as that feeling of distress that's sort of produced by the perception that your needs are not being met. And so what happens is when you start to feel like your emotional needs aren't being met, your brain actually starts triggering the survival hormones. And then you start to get really afraid that you actually can't survive because you perceive that you're in social isolation or that you're lacking some type of companionship or support for someone else. And what you have to do is you have to recognize that this loneliness is only a feeling and it's not a fact. And so even when you're lonely, it's really because something has triggered a memory of that feeling, because when you think about it, we're all connected. So you're never really all alone on this planet Earth. There's people everywhere. But when you perceive that you're all alone, what happens is then you start to attract more loneliness within you. So for example, if you think you're lonely and you feel like the threat that your expectations aren't met, and then you start to feel alone, it triggers the secondary memory, which says, I'm alone, I'm going to be alone forever, and I'm hopeless, helpless, unlovable, incompetent, afraid, and it just starts this vicious cycle of the recurring feelings of stress, pessimism, hostility, anger, low self-esteem, and then it gets into, this is going to be my life forever. And so what you have to do to kind of move to the next point is you have to almost put parentheses or like an expiration date on it, which is like, I'm going to allow myself to feel lonely today. And then tomorrow, I'm going to start remembering what love was. And so you have to force yourself to be around happy people, right? You can't keep ignoring them and say, I can't stand couples. I don't want to go to any more weddings. I don't want to look at any more. I love movies. I can't do it because it's too painful. If you ignore them, then you start to cut them out of your life, and then you just attract more loneliness. So you have to, in fact, go where love is.
But Louisa, that's hard.
That's interesting.
I get it, Louisa, but that's hard, right? Because I've got hurt. I've got stuff that I'm not over. I don't want to see happy couples because it reminds me of everything I don't have. I don't want to watch the rom-coms because they make me ill, because I look at this thing and I think I'm never going to have it, right? We've all got this unhealed trauma, whether it's from some hurt that's a long time ago or from the knucklehead that hurt us last month. So, Alyssa, how do we get past that part?
Well, I think it requires a tremendous amount of generosity towards oneself. Not everything we let go of has to have claw marks on it. We are constantly sort of in this place when it comes to love that's very anxious. And there seems to be this self-imposed window. Like, if I don't find love now, or if it doesn't work out for me now, then all my chances are gone. So I think that when things start to go south or you're feeling lonely, what's really important is to realize that this is part of the human experience. It might not be the most pleasant part, but it is definitely part of the experience. We are constantly holding on and letting go, remembering and forgetting. So it takes a lot of bravery to look forward in this life, knowing that the potential to be hurt exists. It does. There are no free passes in this life. But you know what else exists? The absolute possibility that love unbound is right at your door. To me, that's really the sort of a restorative step. Sorry, I think I've... Can you guys hear that? Am I ringing?
Oh, you're good.
I don't hear a ring. I think you're good on my end.
Okay, sorry for that. But I really think it is tricky. Like, I hear what Louisa says about love being constantly around. We're all connected. But Dr. Ish, I hear that too. It's really hard when you have the muscle memory, you have the trauma. And one thing I want to hark to is that depending on how you grew up, love, although it seems like it should be the most basic and easiest thing to receive, is often the hardest. If we grew up in homes where love was anemic or beholden to conditions, like you were only feeling loved if you did X, Y, or Z, or you looked a certain way, or you spoke a certain way, or love was inconsistent, or love was combined with substance abuse or other abuses, it is a lifetime process to re-understand love and have your brain and body re-understand love too. So that generosity piece that I started with, I want to circle back to. We have to be generous with ourselves, because love is the last test and proof for which everything else is just practice. And even those who are experts at love are going to find themselves tender-hearted and hurt. And that's just part of it. Now, I've had times when I have felt absolutely on my knees, as though I could not survive the loneliness and the pain. And lo and behold, I did. All of our success rate thus for survival is 100%. Were we as graceful as we could have been in some of our rougher moments? Maybe not, but we're still here and we're still talking about it. So I don't know if there's a perfect way to get over a love gone awry, but I do think there is some magic in believing that it's worth it. It's worth it to keep going. I really think it is. I think that that's the human experience. And sometimes it's really ugly and things don't go our way. And other times it's so absolutely outrageously gorgeous. We couldn't have even dreamed it into reality. Yeah.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's worth it. And I think one of the big things is, like you said, it's a risk, right? You can't have all the love you want without risking getting none of it at all. But in the end, the risk is worth it. And you said something super important, you know, and it goes back to how you define love, right? How was it taught to you? Because all of our parents gave it to us in a different way, whether it was something they were actively doing by being present or something we learned in their absence, right? When they were accepting towards us, it taught us security. If they showed us appreciation, it let us know that we were significant. If they showed us that they were available to us, it made us feel important as kids. If they showed us affection, it let us know that we, in fact, were lovable. So it really depends on how that lesson was laid down, is how you, in the way you seek it now and how you want to receive it. But when we talk about loneliness, right?
Yeah, I just want to add one thing there. And I think that I know a lot of very smart people who are what I like to call love chameleons. They have learned since childhood what face to put on to receive positive love vibes back. I used to be the expert love chameleon.
Alyssa, I feel attacked.
You know, it's a thing, you know, because when I was growing up, I felt like I had to wear a lot of different hats to really please a lot of different people. And I think that in the dating now, there's a lot of editing, there's a lot of different profiling, there's a lot of different angles. Like, what was that meme that was going around, like Tinder, something, 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 and it showed 4 different images of yourself? Right. Like, that syndrome, right, although we sort of laugh at it, is actually inherited from childhood. What it is, if we're really generous about it, is people reaching out in the world and saying, I want to be loved. I'm showing you all these different sides, hoping you'll love me.
Yeah.
So the love chameleon syndrome, I think, is one that we're all familiar with, honestly.
Yeah, and in different situations, we have to be different people, right? We're going to be somebody different at work. We're going to be somebody different with our family. We're going to be somebody totally different sometimes with our friends, and then we're going to be somebody different with our romantic partner. And so I think, you know, in a way, it's a healthy thing because it teaches you how to get it in any given situation, but it can also get in the way of really, it can really obscure the connection after a certain amount of time. And so when we're talking about healing, and so in talking about healing that trauma so you can get back out there and do the thing, I think what happens with a lot of the folks we see is a lot of our folks have slipped into this perpetual pattern of feeling unloved, this perpetual pattern of feeling lonely. This is just the way world is, and we start to tell ourselves that story. Stacey, what are some of the problems you've seen with that long-term pattern of loneliness?
Well, part of what I see is that people end up wanting to settle. They tend to want to give up. Yeah. Both of those things leave people deprived of ultimate happiness. I think what you were talking about, that whole chameleon thing, is really great, because I think not only can we be chameleons for love ourselves, but I think we run into chameleons and we think we've got something or someone, but it turns out to be someone else. And so that's where that whole learning curve comes in. I think instead of us just settling, instead of us giving up, I think we have to start really paying attention to what kind of people am I drawing in? what kind of people am I keeping in my life, and what kind of people am I looking for? And so my recommendation out of this is that everyone make a list of what it is that they're looking for in a relationship. And it needs to include things like respect and trust and adoration. It has to include everything. And then when you meet people, you need to run down that list and make sure that they are better than 80% of that list. And I bet you if you look back at exes, you might have a couple that have filled a lot of those needs. But what I think we aren't doing is targeting what it is we exactly need. Yes, you need to have the chemistry component. But if you are spending time and investing energy in people who aren't actually meeting the criteria of your list, then you're going to ultimately end up disappointed. And I think the other thing that I want to talk about is love is one of those things that you can't see and you can't measure it. It's not like, you know, the length of my hair that I can literally say like, this is so long, this is so big. And so in seeking love, when we're looking for, what we're really looking for, it's really hard to know what it feels like. And so what you have to look at is what doesn't feel good. And oftentimes, I literally was just talking to a woman who's been dating a guy, and she said, you know, when I first met him, I was like, eh. And then she said, and every time I see him, I keep thinking, well, when I have a drink or something, I like him better. Like, okay, this is not good.
I like everybody better when I drink.
Yeah, you should not. What are you doing? And she said, and what she literally said to me is, he's right on paper. And right on paper it wasn't her list. It was just right on like the society's paper. And I said, you know what? He's not imprinting correctly for you on the feeling level. And so if you are not feeling good, if it's a lot of work, if you're not happy, they have to go and you need to find someone else.
I love that.
So that's huge. So I need so that's big. So when Alyssa was talking about the chameleon, right? I felt really attacked, but I'm going to forgive her. But like all of y'all really attacking me tonight. I'm not sure what happened in our private sessions, but let's come back to this. So I learned to be a chameleon, right? And for me, I was just that. I'm really good for anybody. I'm a Pisces too. I know I can shift, honey. I can see you. I can feel you. I'm an empath. I know what you need from me. Recently, I had a very real conversation with my ex, right? Years, and he said, you're right for everybody, but no one's ever right for you. He was like, do you know how hard it is to lay beside someone that you know you're not fulfilling? That was a hard reality for me. And it made me realize something else. In the time that I was with him, we had so many friends and family and people that was always around. I was doing great in school, I should have been at the top point of my life. Everybody was around. I've never felt so lonely. I've never in my life felt as lonely as I did at that point. And it goes back to the point of you have to recognize what loneliness is. You can be in a room full of people and still have loneliness. It's that feeling that you feel like, this just don't feel right, or I would rather be somewhere else than here. And I had to go through a process where I realized a lot of what I was dealing with was because I was that chameleon. And the truth about being a chameleon is you don't really know who you really are at the end of the night. When the lights are out and everybody else is laying down, chameleons don't really know. This is something I formed really early. I had been through trauma and I just wanted everybody to love me. I wanted to be normal again. So I learned at a very young age how to read people and give everybody what they needed. It was actually years back before I was really able to look at myself in the mirror and say, not only am I lonely, I don't even know what love really is. What is love? Because anyone can tell me that they love me, but because I'm so lonely and I'm hearing all these I love yous, I don't really feel like I'm loved. I actually feel a lot of abandonment. They don't know that I'm feeling this, but I'm feeling really abandoned by everyone around me because they're not seeing something deeper that I need. And I was deflecting that, right? Your internal will always create your external. So I was inviting all of these people because I was chameleon. So I was inviting chameleons and none of us knew what love meant. My friends didn't know. They weren't no good for my life. Who I was laying beside didn't know. He was no good for my life. Everybody around, even relatives relatives that I was clinging to, they were no good for my life, but they were just like me, because the people that you have around you are a reflection of you. I had to take a really serious look at life and what love was and what loneliness meant to me. For someone else, it might mean that someone's not sitting beside you. For me, it means that I wasn't fulfilled. And I had to figure out what I loved about me, what I liked. And I had to realize I don't want to lay beside somebody because he can just protect me. He big, buff, he's that guy. I want him to be able to roll over and be like, did you see that political debate last night? I didn't realize that those were things that I needed. I didn't realize that I didn't want him to just text me what you're doing, but I wanted him to send me an article or the new song that just dropped, and maybe the song was ratchet, but the political thing that happened the week before was different, because I'm an onion and I have so many different layers, and I needed somebody to meet the need of those layers in my life. And that was the loneliest time in my life. So going back to you guys' point, it's all about you. If you can fix the relationship with yourself, you fix the relationship with everyone else around you. You begin to attract those kind of people. And the people that you don't attract, you're okay with. I'm okay with being lonely. Tamra will tell you, she's like, have you talked to anybody in the past 2 weeks? Girl, no. I'm not lonely because I'm fulfilled, right? So I've learned that loneliness for me just looks completely different. I just get to a different place, but I didn't know that until I knew what I liked. I didn't know what I loved, and I did not love myself, honestly, because I didn't know that love was truly an action and it wasn't just words. So loving myself and loving yourself sometimes means if you're depressed, get out of bed and take a shower anyway. If you hadn't got dressed in 3 weeks, get dressed anyway. If you don't feel pretty, still put on a lip gloss. If you don't feel like working out, still work out. If you don't necessarily want to talk to that friend who's going to be hard on you, but you know that friend is good for you and they serve your life, call them anyway and let them fuss at you, because love is truly an action and it's an evolution of life. I think that's why we're all here, so that we can honestly learn how to love through our purpose and through the Creator's purpose. So that's something that's never figured out, and it constantly evolves, and it begins with looking in the mirror and saying, do I even love me, or do I even know what love or loneliness even means? And Tamra, I think you can really, really speak to this, because I think we went through that journey together, and I think that's why I consider her my sister. It was a lot of days where we were both having real conversations with each other, going through things like, I don't know anything about love on any level, on a friendship level, on a love level. I'm learning those things, right? And so it wasn't as lonely because I had this friend to go through it.
Oh.
Wow. That's a beautiful thing. Shatana, you touched on so much right there that gets so many of us in trouble when it comes to the distractions and the others and the extra things we pile in our life to make us, believe that we are loved, right? We need the mirror. We need the reflection. We need somebody to hold it up. That's kind of, how we know who we are. But at no point can we look outside to fill up the thing that should be filled up on its own inside, right? And I think that's why a lot of us are struggling right now, because we have been forced to sit with ourselves, with our thoughts, with our being, and it is making us intimately uncomfortable. So Alyssa, talk to me about how do you learn how to be your own best company, right? How do you save yourself in this solitude with that you can, like Shatana said, you can be around a room full of people and still feel absolutely abandoned?
Yeah, I think that feeling uncomfortable is a great gift, actually. I think that friction, that sense of angst, that anxiety, that real discomfort with intimacy with ourselves is a benefit to us. This time is super uncomfortable for a lot of people. They're not getting the reinforcement they might get in,
Right.
their cultural endeavors. They're not getting hit on by, attractive others. They're
Right.
not getting the accolades at work. And what's happening is that the pace has slowed down. And as industrious as you might be in your home space, it still feels quieter. There's only so much fill that you can do. So I think one of the things to acknowledge first and foremost is you might feel uncomfortable, and it's just a feeling state. It doesn't last forever. And honestly, the more you can sit with the discomfort in the beginning, Even if it's just for a few minutes a day, quietly sitting with yourself, doing something reflective like meditation or journaling, or even just quietly walking around your house without any, technology. Every single day you soften into that a little bit. A lot of the Zen monks will say, like, invite your comfort in, give them a cup of tea, but leave the back door open. Like, this doesn't have to be an excruciating process like pulling teeth where you're staring at yourself in the mirror, who am I? We're not looking for any self-intervention. But there is such grace, and I'll go back to that word that's so resonant, mercy, and just sitting with yourself and giving yourself a break. Yeah, sometimes it's really uncomfortable because memories are going to come up. Thoughts about yourself are going to come up. You might have a really sort of self-critical narrative that starts to run when you don't feel like you've been productive enough. And I think that when you can start having the dialogue with yourself about your enough isms, then you really can start to settle down a little bit. I like to call it demystifying the hustle. Yeah, we're all really good at doing things, but it is really tough for a lot of people just to be with themselves. So that friction, that discomfort, it just is what it is. And I think the more we can just be with those feelings without trying to numb them out can mean food, alcohol, sex, online shopping, exercise, any member of distraction. The more we can just sit for a few minutes with ourselves and be uncomfortable, eventually something happens. Eventually we start to enjoy our own company a little bit more. And unless we can really get to that place, like Shatona said so wisely, we will cling to things that do not serve us. Because in a true state of love, there is no clinging. That's what I was saying before. Not everything we let go of or hold on to has to have claw marks on it. When we really are in a place where we feel good about our own lives, love is fluid. Love is gentle. It doesn't demand and it doesn't extort. And that starts with our ability to be uncomfortable with ourselves.
Yeah, clinging is very dangerous, and I think most people cling. Really habits habits are so good, aren't they? Once you get a good habit, you keep taking them back, right? You keep seeing the potential, realizing that they're never really, reaching that potential. Clinging, boy, it's dangerous. So clinging is also dangerous because you can let someone go or someone walks away, but you're still going to spy on them and look and see what they have going on. That's dangerous. When you decide to love you, everybody that lets you go, if they let you go, they were not connected to you. You can get super glue and you can't make them stay. If you're not connected to them, your path, let me tell you, destiny is crazy. When two people's destinies are going in two different directions, and you can try to cling as much as you want, hold it, knit it. You can knit it together, get a sewing machine. You can do a lot of things. But the reality is, like, one big hurt is better than a whole bunch of little hurts. And the moment you look at the mirror and you say, this doesn't serve me, this makes me lonely, this doesn't make me happy, you let it go. Be brave enough to love yourself enough to say, they may not care and they walked away. I thought it was love, but I love me enough to see what's next. And maybe this wasn't for me. I'm not going to look. Don't entertain those thoughts. When you begin to have those thoughts, when you're thinking about that ex or whatever, I need you to manifest a new one. Okay, create your new life, your new man, your new friends. Your friends hurt you, great. You don't need to go and see if they still go to the beach every 4th of July. That's great if they do. Now focus on what you're going to do on the 4th of July. You don't need to see what the new girl looks like. It doesn't matter. Whatever someone was to you in that part of your life, in that season of your life, that's great. Maybe you made them better for her. Now move on to your destiny for whoever's for you. And I think that's one of the biggest things too, because so many times we're like, oh, we letting it go, we moving on, and you in a whole new relationship, and his name might be different, but it's the same person because you ain't never let him go. So you back with Alex again, and you ain't even realized it. And the truth is, when you let Alex go, let him go. When you let
Tamra, you're shaking your head.
Let her go. Honey, let him go. Everybody knows. Girl can get unattached.
Shatana, do you see Tamra over there? Shatana, do you see Tamra over there smiling? I think.
Nice, bye.
Hang on, Hang on, Chaitana. I think Tamra's got something to say about that. She's over there just waiting to get it out.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, she nodded like,
So
tell them
I
about
believe
it.
that well, the universe is going to give the exact same lesson in different versions over again until we master it. So this is like, to me, one of the most single important laws you can learn about the nature of reality is everything else like builds upon it. That's why like I went through relationships and I repeated them like Shatana was saying with a different person with a different name, but it's the same person. But that's why I had to understand I need to love myself a little bit more. I know we've been talking about loving other people, but if people don't love themselves as much as they love other people, they're not even going to recognize that they're not really, that's not really love. So that's why I have to like, I pray and I surrender to the lesson every single time it comes back. And I try to do things differently. I'm not perfect, so I don't always get it right, but I continue to, elevate myself. And I'm like, look, you got to handle this. You're a boss. Before you can move on to the next level, all with loving and kindness towards myself and others, at our respective paths, you have to like just surrender to that and say, why does this lesson keep coming back to me? What did I not learn this time? Like, what did I not learn last time? Why is it coming back? Why is it coming back? So I don't want to repeat any more lessons. I've been repeating lessons and I'm over that. I graduated, everybody's graduation class of 2020. I graduated class of 2020. Y'all just don't even know. So I really wanted everybody to understand that like loving yourself is very, very important. I did not get that lesson until later on in life because I had like abandonment issues when I was younger. So I didn't understand what love was. But when I grew and went through different things that I went through and I finally understood what love really is, I'm like, oh, this is love. Like, so however I treat myself, I want another person to treat me the same way, if not love me more than myself, or teach me how to love myself even more by loving me. That's what I want to say. Well, you know what I think about sometimes too? We often talk about how we feel about the other person, but I think a very good measure of the health and functionality of a love relationship is how we feel about ourselves in the relationship. How do we act in the relationship? How do we find ourselves thinking in the relationship? Do we trust our instincts in the relationship? I think some warning signs and red flags in relationships are when we start to turn our inner voice off and start to ignore our intuition. We start to get into some waters that become a little bit murky and a little bit deeper than they need to be. So I think a really good question when in relationship is, do I feel authentically myself in this relationship? Can I be vulnerable? Do I feel like I need to edit? Am I constantly manicuring and curating the experience the other person is having of me? Because if you answer yes to those things, it's still part of that chameleon syndrome, that unworthiness, that hustling, trying to figure out what the other person needs. And in psychological terms, and this is a real hot phrase for people, people get very defensive, myself included, when somebody suggested I might be this a little bit. They call that codependency. Really more worried about how the other person's doing and feeling and fixing their experience than we are actually concerned with our own well-being and inner emotional state.
Yeah,
so
and what happened?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say absolutely, because what that does is when you start really worrying more about what someone else is doing wrong in a relationship, sociologically, what happens is you start to put blame on the other person rather than looking inward at yourself, and you create these false narratives, and then you get, immediately fixated on whatever it was that they did wrong. And then what happens is you keep telling yourself that it's someone else's fault. If only they did this, the relationship would be better. Or if only they did this, or if it's their fault. But it's never their fault. They might have did something, but how you respond to that is your reaction. And when you can just pause for a little bit, and we talked about this in other calls, and just, slow down just a little bit. And every time something bad happens, ask yourself, does that really matter? Is it really affecting me? Was it one tiny thing? Or am I amplifying it and destroying what otherwise might have been a really, really beautiful relationship? And I think what you have to start to do every time you have something negative happen is you have to hold on to that negative thing for a minute. And then you have to say to yourself, why did I fall in love with this person in the first place? Because in reality, and hear this if you're listening, the promise of love is that Don't listen to other people filled with fear when you yourself are on the verge of courage. And it takes courage to kind of put all your fears on the sideline and just say, okay, I'm going to walk in faith that as I learn to love myself more, I'm growing my ability to love other people. And you can't keep going back to thinking about your ex, thinking about all the things that went wrong in other relationships. Because if you keep looking back at your ex, guess what? You're never going to get a next, because it's going to be the ex repeated. It's going to be, you know, same story, different actor. And it's going to be like season 10 of the same drama. And you have to decide when you want to turn that drama into a comedy or a love story. And only you can do that by changing the narrative. And I think that sometimes, like so many of us said on this call tonight, we get so worried if other people love us, but the more you learn to love yourself, the better that love ability is to kind of just echo itself around you. And I just want to share a little exercise that I came up with all by myself. I call it Me, Myself, and I. And within it, what I do is I imagine myself rolling out my own red carpet. And what that looks like is, for years when I didn't really love myself and I, didn't like my body, or I didn't like the fact that I felt lonely, or I felt like I would never get a husband, I would shop aimlessly, retail therapy, or I would do things aimlessly, eat aimlessly, do anything to fill the void. But now what I've decided is, I know that I'm going to have so many events a year when we're not in quarantine and pandemic. I know that there's, Uncle Joe's birthday, or there's, a wedding, or there's a Christmas party, or there's an office get together. And so what I started doing was arranging my closet like I was a celebrity, so I would go shopping saying, oh, I need a pretty dress for this, or, oh, I need to wear this earrings with this outfit because I want to look good when I present myself to the world, because the world really is my stage. And I even take it so far as in the morning, even if I have no place to go, I don't leave my dressing area until I get up and I put my face on for the day, because I feel like that expression, that 3 to 5 minutes that I spend taking care of me and tending to my own garden, it makes me present myself to the world that says, I love you. And it says, I love me. And myself is the most important part of this equation, because if I'm good to me today, there's a pretty good chance I could be good to you. And if I can't be good to me, I really can't be good to anyone. So I just like to encourage all of you to really, date yourself, think of the me, myself, and I, roll out your own red carpet, because, that's how you walk gracefully in your own limelight.
It's beautiful.
Dr. Ish, you're on mute.
I keep them handy.
Yeah, because you have to be ready, right? So if Prince Charming showed up, if Prince Charming or Princess Charming showed up at your front door and said, hey, I want to whisk you away, to a dinner out, or just take you for a walk, and, the paparazzi might be there, or, you just want to look good in your first selfie together, you want to be ready. And, there was a time when I'd have said, oh, I can't go, I don't have anything to wear. And even now, as I've transformed my own life, sometimes my friends, I'll invite them places, some of my girlfriends even, they'll be like, oh, I can't go, I don't have anything to wear, I don't feel good about this. And that's a sign that you're not ready. So even if you're on this call and you know that if somebody asks you to go to dinner right now, or somebody says, hey, let's go out, and if you think to yourself right now, oh, I don't feel good, or I don't look good, that's your sign that you might not be ready to date. And that, you have to, date yourself, and until you know that in any moment you're ready for what comes next, then you got to keep looking inward and work on me, myself, and I before you're ready to work on we.
Right.
Yeah. That's super true. I think one of the biggest mistakes a lot of folks make when they're getting into a relationship, right? We can all go over that list in our head of what the perfect guy is, what the perfect woman is. What are those qualities that we want? What are those traits that that I think are valuable? But we never ask ourselves the most important question, which is, would I date me? Would I marry me? Would I get down on one knee right now and propose to myself? Can I look myself in the mirror and promise the person looking back that I will never leave you no matter what, rich or for poor, for better or for worse, through sickness and in health? And most of us never do that part. And so no matter how much time, how much attention, how much affection your other is pouring into you, you don't have it for yourself. And so it's never going to land. And so that's when we're listening, Louisa, when you talk about dating yourself. Alyssa, you talked about, being safe in your solitude. That's one of those things, right? One when folks come to me, one of the first things I want them to do is write out a list of the 10 things they love about themselves. Not the 10 things that your mom told you she liked about you, not the 10 things your best girlfriends tell you about you, not the 10 things that your colleagues always comment about, the 10 things that when you look in the mirror and you say, you know what, yeah, that's cool about you and that's cool about you, right? Because this is your package. We all got a package. There's a Louisa package. There's a Tamra package. There's an Alyssa package. There's a Stacy Kaiser package. There's a Shatana package. There's an
We know I got the package, Dr. Ish. We already know about me and my package. Like, it is it, honey. Everybody on the call know about my package, honey. It's like, it's me. You got to get like you. It's me, honey. Because I got it. All of it is here. It is
right
here.
But you got to understand what those things are. You got to know what you are bringing to the table, because it all goes back to, am I actually worth being loved? And the answer is absolutely yes, but you've got to help them by identifying those things in you. Tamra, you're shaking your head over there. I see you got something.
Yeah,
Yes, he is too, Tamra and Stacy.
I have a notepad. I'm taking notes. I'm not a host today. I'm taking notes.
I was taking notes last time when Dr. Ish was telling me if he's standing on 2 feet, he being honest. If he fidgety, watch him. That's, I was like, yeah, I can't go back out with him.
Yes, every time when people even say one word to me when I go for my daily walks, I am looking at their posture, and
he's ruined my life in that aspect.
Yes.
Like, every man who's trying to ask me on dates, they do not like you, Dr. Ish. I'd be like, did you watch The Wild with Dr. Ish? Let me talk to you, son.
Oh, I've even taken it to another level. If I meet new people on Zoom calls or online dating, I'll say, could you stand up and introduce yourself? I want to look for the shift. I want to see them front and center telling me their name.
If they don't know who Dr. Ish is, I'm already offended. Like, excuse me, sir, do you know who Ish Major is? I don't. You know what? We can't even have this kind of conversation. You don't even know. It's okay. Like,
yeah, I think we can take all of our words of wisdom calls and we can make like a little question and answer. And if you fail the test, then don't even bother dating me.
We can definitely ruin some lives with compiling that, because we can come up with some stuff on here. Sometimes it's rough. I think my cousin was like, girl, you had me evaluate my whole marriage. I was like, wait a minute, we're not trying to break up happy homes. Like, everything don't apply to everybody. You got to know what works for you. So I want to say that about all these calls. When you're hearing stuff, nobody's the same. Nobody's the same. Everybody has their own blueprint. Don't expect love is going to look the way I say it. Don't think that the way I tell you to get over being a chameleon is the same way. Don't think that all people who fidget are lying. Some of them just nervous because they feel overwhelmed by your presence. And I think it's so important when you're watching Words of Wisdom to ask questions so we can clarify those things, and to also take what's for you, right? And that's a part of loving you too, because you know what makes you tick and what makes you talk, And I joke around a lot, but I learned so many things on these calls, and so many things they relate to me, and then some things don't, and I can see those in other people. So I want to encourage everybody, because we got like 200 people on Facebook alone that's tuning in. I want to encourage you, one, to follow the therapists that's here, and me and Tamra too. We're real life survivors, but follow you learn other lessons. Watch us in other places.
I'm still learning, y'all. I'm still learning.
Girl, the people who learn, we all learn all the time. We learn all the time, but ask your questions. Follow Stacy and Alyssa and Dr. Ish and Louisa, like these, listen, like they do things outside of Words of Wisdom. What you take on Words of Wisdom, take it, understand this is like an hour conversation. If some of these things are going to work for you, some of them aren't going to work for you. And always try to get the premise. And I think the premise of this is self-love. And that looks different for all of us and all of our relationships. And we're all at different spots. And be okay with wherever you are. If I would have had this conversation last year, I would have been like, I am not a chameleon. Right. What do you mean? However, today I sit here and I'm like, I'm a recovering chameleon, and I was good at being a chameleon. However, I'm not there anymore, right? So I just want to say that because I'm looking at the comments, and don't take everything to heart, but definitely listen to what the doctors are saying. Be careful because what I say, it can be, it's a slippery slope. Listen to them. Just
Tamra, speaking.
I'm unique. I'm a different kind of person. But definitely just take your time and listen and apply to you. And Stacey, you've been shaking your head and you know how I feel about you talking. So say it. I'm listening.
Well, I just wanted to say, I mean, I think it is so important that we're talking about the self-love thing, but they have to treat you right too. And that is so important also. Right. You need to be loved how you deserve to be loved. And there's so many people, I mean, I think we very much need to love ourselves, but oftentimes, even if we love ourselves, we still meet people, whether it's friends or business or intimate relationships, and they aren't loving us the right way. And if somebody isn't treating you right, if they aren't worried about whether or not you need to get those political text messages, or you want somebody, you know, the person that you are spending time with should actually be interested in what it is that you want and need. And especially for those of us, I mean, everybody on this call right now, we're all the givers. And so we need to make sure that we end up in relationships with other people who give as well. Because if you're both giving, you don't have to be so worried about whether or not you're getting your needs met, because you know that the person on the other end of that relationship is looking out for you as well.
And they want to learn the things to give to you too. I've met like amazing people who they weren't like me, but people get interested in what you're interested in, right? When people really care about you, they're like, I don't know what that is, but what? Like when you're really with someone who serves your life, things happen, right? You grow together in beautiful ways. Their best parts and your best parts. For instance, like, I mean, I work out, but I'm not a workout guru, right? So a particular person has me like, I'm like, oh my goodness, it is 8:30. I got to get to the gym, because it's become fun and just listening to what it is. Like, right? I'm like, I'm cool with the extra. And he like, really? But we could. And I'm like, okay, let's work out. At the same time, wasn't necessarily always into politics, but now he'll be like, hey, did you see that they dropped in, you know, this? And I mean, he's not great at it. I know I'm gonna have to text Tamra afterwards to fulfill the rest of political conversation, but he's trying, right? So it's very important to understand that the people who really want to be in your life, they're gonna take an interest. They're gonna serve your life. And if not, it's okay to say, I can't settle. It's not that you're a bad person. It's not that I'm a bad person. However, where I am and where I'm going, you don't serve me in this dimension. Maybe we can be friends. However, the person that I want to marry, they got to serve me on a different level. Have high expectations of life. Want to be great in your career. Want an extraordinary love. Okay? Want an extraordinary life. You should never settle for anything in life. You bring that includes love. And if it hadn't found you yet, somebody was talking, but that makes a really good point.
Well, I was just going to say, Shatana, you bring up a really good point, and that's one of the things that we wanted to sort of kind of tie this all together with. And Dr. Ish, how do you get back in the game? You know, like when you feel like you've started to love yourself and you're ready to be courageous, how do you put yourself out there?
Well, there's no one way to do it that's right or wrong. It's going to be different for everybody. Everybody's, like Shatana touched on it, everybody's at different levels as far as, you know, and Tamra talked about too, is where we are with who we understand who we are and how much we're loving ourselves today or how much we're not loving ourselves today. And sometimes that changes from day to day, from week to week. For some folks, it changes from hour to hour. And so I think ultimately it's one of those things, there's only so much you can do to hide from it, right? This is a big, wide world we live in, and it is a very smart universe, and the universe is much smarter than we ever are. It is always trying to give us those things that we need and that we know we want, even though we may not think we deserve it. Or even though we may not think we're ready for it, your inner you, your true you, that part of that connection you have to your creator, whatever you call it, always knows the thing you want, and it's always trying to give it to you. And most of the time, all we got to do is get out of our own way and just let it come. Your only job is to show up and ask. You know what I think I want today? I think I want somebody who's a beautiful soul inside, and it shines outside, and their light and their eyes brighten up. And I think that's what I want, and I think that's what I deserve. And then stop thinking about it. Just get out of the way and just let it be, right? A lot of us, so that's the spiritual side of it, right? So when we're talking about getting back in the game, Well, one of the games now is how we're all doing this whole meeting tonight. I'm on my phone. Some of you are on your laptops. If you're out and you're about and you're amongst people, none of us are doing that now. Some say step back into it. But one of the main things you got to do is you got to make yourself look like you're actually available, right? You gotta take your phone, your head out of your phone, and you get around you. I don't know about females, but for guys in particular, we are deathly afraid of approaching a woman who doesn't look approachable, right? And so we're always, if I'm out and I'm looking, I am always scanning the horizon for who's available to be approached. You've got to look approachable. Make some eye contact. Show me a smile, right? Show me that you're not
standing in prowling. Is that what you just said?
All the women are like going, Dr. Ish.
Right?
You know what, Dr. Ish, I'm not even going to put you out there like that, but I'm going to talk to you after this call. You said we're going to leave it for after the call. It's fine. It's fine.
Leave it up and go. And you know, and so Tanya, you touched on something that was crucially important when it comes to dating, right? And getting back out there, and it's curiosity. Right? The day I stop asking questions about you is the day you need to be worried about this relationship. The day I am not concerned with what else you have going on in your life that I don't know about is the day you need to be concerned about this relationship. When I stop asking the next question, oh, you like this article? You like this politician? Well, why is that? Right? If I just take it and run with it, then we got a problem. Curiosity is the biggest form of flattery, and when I stop being curious about you, we've got problems. So you should always remember to ask the next question, right? That's how you stay connected. The curiosity keeps you connected. Really? So listen, so you mean to tell me you meditate 30 minutes a day? Wow. How do you do that? Right? Always ask the next question. We're all our favorite subjects. The more you allow me to talk about me, the more I like you. That's just how it works. So curiosity, never forget that part. You just got to be curious about the world.
Yeah, I think that those are really, really good
points. I have to get going today. I have to get going a little early.
Thanks. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Great, thank you so much. And also thank you to all the panelists, and thank you to everyone who's tuned in. You can find Stacy at the Stacy Kaiser on Instagram, and you can just Google her. She's got a brilliant website that has lots of really good, impactful information. Thank you, Stacy.
Bye,
and you can find Melissa at
take care of yourselves.
And you can find Alyssa Gruber at Alyssa Gruber Wellness and NYC Wellness. You can find Dr. Ish everywhere. Dr. Ish. I think we have a bizarre
Let's Google him.
Dr. Ish keeps going in and out. Yeah. Google Dr. Ish. Shatana Nelson, celebrity publicist, thefinesthourpr.com. Tamra, did you have any last minute things that you wanted to kind of wrap up or share with us before I close it out?
No, this was a great class. Thank you, Dr. Ish. Well, thank you, Alyssa.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shatana.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say that, thank you to everyone for listening and watching. And I found really interesting things when I was kind of putting this kind of show together to love and loneliness. And I wanted to say, that the solution for loneliness doesn't lie far behind us. It's actually very close at hand, because it's really your own personality trait that you sort of develop inside yourself. And it's really about learning to become wise. And when you think about it, Homo sapiens, the word, we're all Homo sapiens, it actually translates literally to wise man. And so when we think about fundamentally, wisdom consists of control over your emotions, pro-social attitudes, empathy, compassion, self-reflection, the ability to make good decisions, acceptance and uncertainty, ambiguity, and spirituality, all the things that you need to commandeer love and loneliness really relates to possessing wisdom. And that's really why we started Words of Wisdom, as this evolutionary concept that when you can't get to the therapist and you can't get to the experts, we have to bring ourselves to you, because the hours worth of information that you heard in segments in this call is, again, tens of thousands of hours working with individual clients, standing in front of auditoriums, reading thousands of books. And it's really just understanding that the more knowledge you give yourself, the more you put yourself out there, the more you'll have your own remedies for loneliness. And that's going to be different for each one of us as we walk this world alone and we learn to curate our own love and overcome the loneliness. Thank you so much for joining in for Words of Wisdom. We look forward to coming back next week. I think we're going to be talking about faith and forgiveness, or maybe friends and foes. Either way, we've got a lot of great upcoming episodes, and we hope you'll keep coming back for more. And thank you for tuning in. This is Words of Wisdom.
Hi, guys.
All right, so we're not recording, or I think we've stopped.
I'm drinking more wine than ever before. I'll be feeling fine with just one glass more. I'll do what it takes to quiet my brain. I'd rather be crazy if everyone's sane. Yet it feels like I can be anyone. Feels like I can do everything. Feels like I can take anything.